Okay, welcome to this webinar about CfMD for NAV 2013 and Mergetool.com's experience of going through the certification. First, I'll go through the CfMD for NAV 2013 and why it's important to get it. Some of the requirements of going through the certification, how to get through the software solution test and the different options you have, how to deal with customer references. The silver ERP was a requirement for us, so I want to go through and talk about some of the things that really made that one a challenge. And at the end, some recommendation how to get it done in an easy way. And at the end, there will be options to have Q&A. And I'll answer some of the questions that people have about this one also in here. So, but why would you go through the CfMD for NAV 2013? The main reason I will say is that if you want to sell your solution in NAV 2013, you need to register it. And if it's not CfMD certified, you need to pay a fee to Microsoft. This fee is quite large. And for many solutions, it will be maybe larger than the money you actually made on selling the whole solution last year in here. It also requires to sign a new contract to do it. So basically, you sign a contract for 2 years, where one of the things is, like, if you don't CfMD certified within 12 months, you basically have to pay the fee back in time also. The other reason, of course, it is a stamp of approval and quality. So it works fine now for new partners who go out, and they will see that you have NAV CfMD certification, and they know the solution is has a certain quality and level of documentation. You also get a Microsoft Pinpoint and Marketplace profile. If we look at how the quarterly fee is calculated, it's basically based on the actual objects assigned to the modules, not to the development ranges. So most ISVs has a 1,000 object development range. That's not what you're paying on. It's only for the modules. And it's also only for the modules you add to the registered solution you have. So if you have modules that you don't really sell any longer, you don't want to add them to the registered solution, because then your fee potentially get higher. If we look at Easy Security as a solution in here, we have 175 tables licensed, 85 reports, 135 code units, and so on. Microsoft will round that up to the nearest sellable number for customers. So in the case of tables, it's round up to the nearest 10. For other objects, it round up to the nearest 100, because that's the groups that end users can buy. If you actually look at the actual numbers, we have a much lower count out here. And that's one of the things that are often done by ISVs, because a customer will get a license for your solution, and then 6 months later, they maybe download the latest version of it, and the latest version has a few more objects in there because it has been improved over time. But if they don't get a new license from Microsoft at the same time, it can actually completely stop the system. So one of the things normally is you give a little extra so there's room to develop in the future in here. And especially you can see in our case, we have 0 XML ports, but we end up actually paying for XML ports simply because we have assigned some to our modules in here. If we look at blocks, that's a sellable size out there, so that's the number of blocks we have in here. It's charged for each group at the price that Microsoft will charge the customer for it. So 10 tables is $800, 100 reports is $800, and so on. They multiply it by a factor of 0.62, and that basically means you're supposed to sell your solution 5 times a year, and that's the object cost you're paying for it. It's not a really good measurement, because a lot of ISV solutions intentionally use many objects, not more than needed, I would say, but you don't go on the low end on using a new object, because it makes it tougher to copy, and that's why you use more objects typically than if you were doing a customization. So it's kind of unfair to say that this one would be the way you would sell it anyway. But if we calculate the fee, it'll be $13,000, $400 every quarter that we'll have to pay. Yearly, $53,000. The fee is being charged on a quarterly basis, and the clock starts when you sign the registered agreement contract with Microsoft. If you have your solution tested and it passes, the clock will stop. And after 12 months, you're supposed to have the solution CfMD certified. That basically means, and if you don't have that in 12 months, you just have to pay after that one. That's 12-month period. The difference between the solution test and the CfMD certification is that you actually have the 10 customer references and the other requirements in CfMD. Solution test is just the fact that somebody looks at the code and verify that it's okay in there. So Microsoft is talking about extending the range from 12 months because as with a large solution, it's close to impossible, I would say, to get 10 references in a 12-month period if you also have to develop it and deploy it at the first couple of customers. So, but basically the fee is charged on a quarterly basis. If you get your solution tested and it passes, the clock stops. But at 12 months, it starts again, and you have to pay back in time from when the contract was signed if you're not CfMD in 12 months. So it's a pretty rough requirement. In our case, we could end up paying more than $100,000 based on both easy security and the Mergetool. The requirement for CfMD is, first of all, you have to pass the software solution test. And there's two versions of it now. There used to only be the test where you send the code, they will look at the code and documentation and things like that one. That is the one called the industry solution track now. It's actually required testing of your software, documentation, and so on, and we have more details in the slide after this. The other is the application and services track, and that's more intended for ISVs not selling direct. You basically have your partner certify that your solution is well-designed, well-documented, has online help, and all the pieces that you actually need in the software test also. But those partners need to be on the silver or ERP level, silver or gold ERP level. And that one is a new way of passing for 2013. And it's really only for partners that sell through other partners, and that's at least that's what it's intended for. So that's the software solution test. The other requirement is you need to have 10 customer references. And if you have an industry solution, you can actually get a case study done with Microsoft. You can have a corporate sponsor that also will give you 2 that sign off on the it is a good solution. So you can get down to 6 references, but you need actual customer references. You also need to create a pinpoint profile. You need to have a roadmap for your software and a support policy. And if we look at Mergetool.com's website, we actually solved that one by putting this release and support in our About section on our website. We basically say that we will do our best effort to release 30 days after Microsoft, and that our support is to partners, and we will have a 24-hour business based on Eastern U.S. time. If you're developing a solution that is not 100% inside NAV, or you don't allow your partners and customers full access to the source code, then you need to set up a software escrow. And that basically means you're putting your Visual Studio components and other things inside an escrow, and if you go out of business, your customers can actually get that and do their own development and improvements for future versions. So that's basically just time-proving your solution for the customer. There is a fee to that one also to set up the escrow, but that's an external component. It's not anything Microsoft or VeriTest deliver. The silver and gold competency is also a requirement. You don't need the ERP competency. You can actually go with the ISV competency. That is easier. But to sign up for that one, you need to pay $2,000 to Microsoft yearly for the silver competency. The software test for industry solution, it really builds on a lot of things in here. There's software and documentation that is tested by VeriTest or Lionbridge. It's the same company. Basically, you must follow all the NAV coding standards that is in there. You must have comments when you change code in the base application. You need to have your variables named properly and things like that one. It's always a good idea to develop that way because the second programmer don't have to figure out what it is that he's looking at here. But especially with solutions that developed over time, it can be quite challenging to actually get it to work right because there's so many things that needs to be changed in it. You also need to have quite detailed documentation about your solution. You need online help, and if you have external components, you need to run the FX cop on it. That's basically verifying that it's assigned, executable, and things like that. There's a lot more test requirement, and there's a pretty good document, 60, 70 pages, that explain all of them, but has a requirement page at the end with mandatory requirements and suggested requirements. So the typical test is 2 to 3 weeks of work for VeriTest. It's done by a not skilled NAV person. So when you have install scripts and things like that one, it can be challenging for them to actually go through it that way. I've also seen that it causes confusion with local country versions. So if you ship something on the North American version, they sometimes test it against the W1 version and come back with a huge list of errors and things like that one. The worst thing about this one is most of these people are located in China. So you basically have no time working with them. So they will send you a question, and you send them an answer, and there's basically a 24-hour turnaround on every little issue they find in most of the cases. The best way to pass a software solution test that we have seen is to basically install everything in a Hyper-V image and ship it to them, because then they don't have to go through the install, and if they find an issue, you have exactly the same database, the same setup as they have, and you can go in and verify the same information. The new way of certifying or passing the software solution test is to have 5 partner references, and it's called the application services track. It basically means your solution is being certified by your current partners, and all they have to do is respond to an email. The partner must have tested the solution on the current version. So where the references can be this version and the previous one, for the partner references need to have tested it on the current version of the software. That means you probably have to release it, or at least give a test version of it to your partners before they can actually certify that it has been tested on the most current one. The partner must have the silver or gold ERP competency with the Microsoft Partner Network. So they must be on a high level with Microsoft. Based on our experience, we needed 8 references before we actually had 5 of them respond, because the email is very open, and it basically means you're certifying based on the company and not you as a person in there. So that's one of the issues about this one. So, and if we look at this one is an example of one of the emails. It's sent from a person at VeriTest up here. So it very often gets mistaken by people and they just completely ignore it. So you have to follow up multiple times to actually get that. The good thing is, as a person certifying it, you get a copy of it. So you can actually email the person and say, hey, now you got this from VeriTest, can you please respond to it? And it's basically saying something about what they're certifying, and they just have to reply with the sentence at the bottom of this email. The customer references is, for many ISV selling high volume, is actually a lot harder to do in here, because it basically means you need to go out and find references at the customers. And if you only sell to partners, you probably don't have a lot of those ones. So you need to contact your partners to get them to give you a couple of references. You will need the name, the email address, the company, and the role that the person actually have in the company for this one. The customer must be using the current version or the previous version, in this case 2013 and 2009 of NAV. And based on our experience, we needed 15 references as a minimum, because a lot of times it's the same thing that you're certifying on behalf of the company and not as a person in here. And that means you get a lot of people that say, oh, I need to ask my manager for this one, and it just dies in that one. And some people, even if you think they're good references, they really don't want to verify it anyway for you. So you need just to put enough in there that you at least get 10 of them to respond. This one is an example of the reference email. Again, you get copied on it, so you actually know who it is. Also, the partner that actually is the one supplying you with the customer reference will also get a copy of it, so they can actually also see the email. And again, you just have to respond to the email and paste in the sentence that they actually have. So that's basically, for CfMD, is like the software solution test and the references. That's really the biggest issue to get the CfMD. The other thing, there's more requirements to get there, and that's the silver ERP competency. Since we were a small company that started in 2010, we had not taken the time to actually pass that one. You need 3 people that cover at least one exam each on those ones, and you need all 4 of them in here. Some of these ones are quite time-consuming to study to if you haven't done it before, and especially the SQL Server one was one that took a lot of time. You also need to get the ERP level. You need to get the SureStaff exam, or it's called Managing Microsoft Dynamics Implementations. And you need one person to pass that one. It can be one of the same 3 above also. You need 3 references on the MPM. That's basically, again, it's the way you put in a customer reference. It goes out to the customer certifies that it's good. The worst thing that we had to deal with time-wise was probably the effective value. As an ISV, you need to have an effective value yearly for $250,000 to Microsoft. And the verification of this number is done by MPN, but the calculation of it is done by the operations center. It is a nightmare to deal with these ones because they can't talk to each other. None of them understand each other what to deal. You basically need to ask them to get the add developer customer invoice, and then you can start typing in your actual accounts that you have sold to, and that's actually the way you would do it. This one is an example how it looks, and you can see down at the bottom it had the menu item add developer costs. You basically type in the account number, the product, and you say save, and then you go through a verification. And after a few days and some phone calls, you probably get these numbers in here with your effective revenue to Microsoft, including your customer ads and things like that. And this one is the number that the partner network try to verify it with. So let's let's look at how we actually did getting through this one in here. We started mid-June actually training for the Sure Step and the other exams we had to pass. Most of July was done studying for these exams, and we actually had our accountant go through the Sure Step test. So she had a previous work where she did a lot of project management, so she was the one that had the best requirements, I think, for that one. So in August 15, we had a kickoff meeting for the beta of CfMD NAV 2013, and 6 days later, we entered all our customer and partner information to VeriTest. The email to customer went out 6 days later, and end of August, we also passed the last exams for the Silver ERP. The email to partners went out on the 7th of September, and the only thing after that one we actually needed was basically the revenue recognition. And it took almost 14 days with constant phone calls, daily phone calls with them, simply trying to figure out what was now the piece we needed to do in here. September 27th, the day before the conference in Belgium for NAV Tech Days, we actually passed the CfMD for NAV 2013. Our first customer tried to buy our solution 2nd of October, and we needed to register our solution and send the contract in hard copy, and October 19th, it was possible to actually send it. So if we look at the cost, just getting to Silver ERP was $11,000 measured in hours and fees, and the CfMD was $8,000 in fees and hours also in here. So how can you get this one done in here? It is very time consuming. You basically have to be on it every day, I would say, else it just falls apart. So the first thing to do is to certify your solution and not your individual module. You have to pay a fee for certification based on how many products you certify. So if you have a solution that, or you have 10 small solutions, you can basically put them together as one big solution and certify that one. We did it with Easy Security, where we had Easy Security roles and logins, field level security, and the Light Edition. That was really one total solution, you could say, and that's what we actually went and certified in here. If you're going through the software test, that is the one where for industry solutions, you should consider restructuring your documentation so it's more precise and it more follows the requirements. If you have fewer pages, it takes less time to identify the pieces where you actually have the requirement filled out. So that's one of the things that you probably want to consider to restructure. Just cut out pieces of your existing ones, or maybe make one that more follow the requirements. And you can also use that one for later on improving your own documentation. So online help is a requirement, but with the Mergetool at no cost, in a few hours, you can actually create online help instead of trying to figure out how to use the online help tool that Microsoft delivers and tell you to use. So, support and roadmap and things like that one can easily be solved on your website. As you saw, we just had a little piece on that showing how we actually release products. So, as you get to references, it's actually a better idea to use smaller companies because you have these emails come out and it's on behalf of the organization. So if the person works in a large organization and is not on top of it, then they have to ask their manager, and it can actually stall the whole process of getting them to respond to it. In a smaller company, it's typically easier to actually deal with. Also, if you know people personally or have dealt with them in an installation or something like that one, it's a lot easier to actually remind them that, oh, can you please respond to this email for us? Another thing is the documentation didn't tell all the things you have to do, but in general you should try to work in parallel as much as possible. There's many of these things you can start in parallel. Even if you're not done with the software test, still finding the references and things like that one is a very time-consuming task. You can start on that one. In our case, the revenue recognition was the one that actually held up for a long time, the last piece of it in here. The silver ERP that we needed to go through was another thing. You don't have to sign up for an escrow, but do all the groundwork to figure out which one you want to use and things like that one at the same time when you're testing the software. And if you need to go through more exams with Prometric, you need to start that as soon as possible because that takes months of preparation and then maybe 1 or 2 tries before you actually pass the exam. Working with Microsoft in this one is a little challenging, I will say. The response from VeriTest is very slow. It can take 3 to 5 days from you sending an email to you get a response on it. It's especially when you try to accomplish something on a very fast pace, it's very unsettling, and that you can end up paying a huge fee to Microsoft because of somebody else is not responding on a proper level, I would say. As you register a solution, remember you have to send a hard copy to Cargo of that one. It's not enough to send an electronic copy, so it takes 4 or 5 days to be processed before it actually is available for sale. When you're talking with the Microsoft Partner Network and the Operations Center, you should ask immediately to have an incident created, because when you call in a week later and there still is no resolution on your incident, it gets a lot more urgent for the agent to actually help you on that one. In the same case, using the chat is pretty much useless because they'll just send you a bunch of links to the website that you probably already have read 10 times before and so on. The way we finally solved our revenue recognition issue was that we called the MPN network person, and we had that person call the AOC, and then we were using 2 Microsoft resources and our time on a 2-hour phone call before they finally agreed that they had to figure out something themselves. So it can be extremely time-consuming. And again, call daily. Don't let it just hang there because nothing happens if you don't remind them on it. So it took 65 days from we had the kickoff meeting on the CfMD until we actually had the first sale. And when we started on working on Silver ERP, it took us 4 months to actually certify for Microsoft Dynamics. And this one is a nice thing. That's the one thing you want to know in here, that you get the email and it basically has been certified for Microsoft Dynamics. There's a lot of information on the website, and I would try to avoid reading anything about 2009 because a lot of it is not right any longer. And so go read everywhere where it talks about registered solutions and things like that one. And there is new documentation out there. There's also several webinars that has a pretty good explanation of some of these things. But if you look at a webinar that is